Okay, so we're an intimate group. Don't worry, I'm not going to get you to do any role plays or anything like that, so you don't have to fear anything. So we've got about 40 minutes together. Now, I can only teach you a very small amount of tips on negotiating in 40 minutes. But I'm hoping that you'll take 2 or 3 things away with you today that will empower you to have conversations that you might have avoided otherwise. In terms of how negotiation makes you feel, I'm going to ask you, it's so un-British, everyone's always like, oh my God, she's going to ask us to speak. But it's always better when it's interactive. So words that the words that for you that are evoked by hearing, you're going to have to go into negotiation. It might be with your partner, it might be with your boss, it could be with a friend. What sort of words come up for you?
Fear.
Fear, yes.
Awkward, cheeky.
Cheeky, okay.
Intimidating.
Yes, intimidating. Anything else? Anything else at all?
Conflict.
Yeah. Yeah, I think actually the word negotiation has a lot of emotions attached to it, and they're very rarely positive ones. So very rarely do you say to a group, oh, how does negotiation make you feel? And you never hear the words excited, opportunity, chance for new beginnings, or any of that. You always hear the same kinds of words. And I know that on a personal level, that for me, negotiation is something I've got a lot better at. I'm a natural avoider. So even though I'm coming across, standing in front of you guys, very confident, actually for me, I was brought up in a way that meant I was a people pleaser. Don't know if anyone else has been brought up a Catholic, but you, there you go. You tend to be a people pleaser when you're Catholic because you're very scared of hell and damnation. I've moved on from that now, but that's how I was growing up. And so I did a lot of people pleasing, and part of being a people pleaser is it's really hard to negotiate because you don't want to upset anyone. But of course, what happens then, you completely abandon yourself. And as a result of that, it's no good for your self-esteem. It's no good for developing your career or anything else. So we're going to talk about this today, hopefully from a slightly different perspective. And I'm going to share a really fantastic tool with you right at the end I use for all tricky conversations. And I've got a lot better at it since building the business. So 5 years ago, I co-founded C&C Search. And over the last 5 years, I've become much better at asking for what I need, not just from my business partner, but from people that we partner with, from my team. And I certainly would have done better in my divorce had I had better negotiation skills. So let's start. So this is the shiny bits of stuff that I want you to know about me. There's plenty of other things, but this is not the forum for sharing that. So I'm a founder, I've done some presenting, speaker, entrepreneur, absolute learning addict. I am no longer a closet geek. I'm a fully outed geek. I love learning, reading, podcasts, TED Talks, anything like that. Oh, come on in. Hey, come on in.
I'm really sorry.
You don't have to be sorry. Come on in.
Thank you.
And I've interviewed, I think, about 12,000 PAs over the last 20 years because I've been in PA recruitment since I graduated. And I love working with PAs, partnering with PAs, but part of my responsibility now as a business owner is to use my platform to be the voice of PAs within organisations. So I spend a lot of time going into organisations and helping them to understand that often that is a community that is not recognised enough, developed enough, rewarded enough, recognised enough. And I know that part of that is when you're in service all the time, which you guys are, you are constantly in service of somebody else in terms of facilitating their success, is that often you abandon then the ability to negotiate as much because you don't want to upset the apple cart. And it's learning that actually negotiation doesn't have to be something that's going to upset anybody else. Okay, so we're going to cover some of the things that you've brought up, which is managing anxiety, anger, because frustration and anger are fairly closely aligned, handling disappointment, and I'm going to share a planning tool for success. So I'm hoping that maybe you will come away from this talk with 2, 3 of these things, which is learning to say no, learning body language cues, listening to other people, conducting better research, and being confident to negotiate everything. My mic pack is just slipping down here because there's no clips, so I'm going to have to hold on to it. Okay, so I want you to just take note of where you think you sit in negotiations at the moment. I'm not going to ask you to share, but this is me, naturally. Now I've learned how not to be this person, but I'm a natural politician. I can be an avoider. I'll often say what people want, that I think they want to hear, rather than actually what I really feel. Does anyone know who Mel Robbins is? Anyone follow Mel Robbins? Oh, she is amazing. So take note of Mel Robbins. She wrote an amazing book after suffering from severe depression. She's now one of the world's most highly paid motivational speakers. But she talks a lot around how we respond to the situations and taking back power in those. And she's amazing at it. So I want you to think about where you sit here. So who here is a natural negotiator? You think you are?
To a degree.
Okay. So I'm a politician. I'm not going to ask anybody to admit to being the bully in the negotiation. And then there's the doormat, so somebody that is really accommodating. And I think that a lot of us can sit in this camp here. And especially if who here works in financial services? Anyone else? Okay, well, we see a lot of this in financial services because that's how they are used to getting their own way. And it can become very difficult then if you're not trained or been in that environment a lot to negotiate with that. The reason why it's important to know where you're starting is that then we can look to how we get you to here, which is win-win. Okay. So we're going to look at emotions in negotiation. So rarely do you hear the word strategy when you start talking to people about how they feel about negotiating. You hear about emotion rather than strategy. And I want to move you away. Hi, no worries. I want to move you away from feeling emotion about negotiation and be much more strategic about how you approach negotiation. And that's going to be the tool that we're going to share at the end. Now, what is the most important aspect of negotiation, would you say?
Knowing what you want.
Having an objective. One of them.
Confidence.
Confidence, yeah.
Listening. Understanding the other side.
Yes. Listening and understanding the other side. So it's empathy. It's actually being able to anticipate the reaction of the person across from you is way more important than any other aspect of negotiation. So often we spend a lot of time before we go into negotiation with anxiety about how it might go and with a lot of attachment to the outcome that we're looking for, but little anticipation of the reactions of the person across from you in a strategic way. So we want to understand how to control emotion. So has anybody heard of Amy Cuddy? Anyone? Okay, so one of the most popular TED Talks is delivered by a woman called Amy Cuddy, and she is a body language expert and an expert in controlling emotion. So she has developed a technique called the Cowgirl or Cowboy technique. Okay, so I'm going to get you all to do it now. So I want you to stand up. It's going to take 2 minutes of your life. And you're still not going to have to talk to one another, so it's okay, okay? So standing up. Okay, so you're going to put your hands on your hips. This is sounds like we're about to move into something else, don't worry. Legs apart, trust me. And you're just going to close your eyes for 2 minutes. Okay? And that is it. Okay, you have a minute to go. Okay, so you can all sit down now. Now, what this has a physiological effect on you. And basically what it does, there is something about opening our heart and chest that helps raise serotonin naturally and lower cortisol. Everyone knows what cortisol is, right? It's your stress hormone, okay? So quite why physiologically it has that effect, but it does. So for me, before I'm about to go into any important conversation, or today, I'll go and find a loo cubicle somewhere and I will just do that for 2 minutes. And if you watch Amy Cuddy's TED Talk, you'll understand much more about why it's so effective. Because obviously going into a negotiation, if you are nervous, all of the studies show us that you are more naturally to take a worse offer. You are less likely to express what you need clearly or ask for what you want, and that you naturally automatically put the person that you're negotiating with at an advantage. So it's small tools like this that help actually build confidence and self-esteem too. So it can even be a bit of a placebo effect, knowing that you've done something like that and you know that it's had this physiological effect can really help you. So when you look at our triangle in terms of our behaviours that come out in negotiation, so who here has ever been in a negotiation and of any kind and got upset and ended up crying? Yes. Who here has been in a negotiation and got, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, pissed off? Yes. So the problem with that is it's a totally disempowering place to be. And so the challenge is to truly understand what your triggers are and to understand how that person might trigger you. So does everyone understand where triggers come from? So triggers are rarely about anything to do with that particular situation. They're to do with things that have happened in our past that then affect how we behave in the future. So it's when someone might say something that perhaps you had a teacher telling you you weren't good enough, or you were trying to fit into a group that you couldn't quite fit into when you were younger, or you had an experience in your career earlier on, and somebody says something or does something that triggers a response, not from that particular situation, but because we've held on to stuff from our past. So when you're going into the next negotiation, I want you to really think about the person that you're negotiating with and think about how they might trigger you. So how have they behaved in the past? What have they done in the past that's caused a physical reaction? Because that's the trigger. The trigger isn't a rational thing. It's a physiological thing, isn't it? It's something you can, how often do you, if you're with, mine's my mother, okay? She triggers me left, right, and center. And sometimes she hasn't even said anything wrong and I can feel my body going, you know. It's a physical thing, isn't it? You feel it, you sense it. So it will help you so much next time you go into one of those conversations to really think about how that person might trigger you. Because the negative behavior that disempowers you in those negotiations can then be controlled. And unfortunately, tears, anger, frustration do not serve you. Okay. So anxiety is what most of us feel before we go into negotiation. Now, I run a business with my brother, and we are both alpha characters, okay? We get on very, very well, but I still get anxious before I go into a negotiation with him because I know that if I don't get that conversation right, we'll trigger each other. And as two alphas that like to be in control, it's quite a and that own 50% of the business, it's quite a challenge. And I still get anxious, but I have learned to control that. So anxiety is basically a response to something we don't know the outcome of. So anxiety is caused by novel stimuli in negotiations. So for me, I spend quite a bit of time visualizing the negotiation. So we've gone through the physiological stuff. We've done our Amy Cuddy stance. I've calmed all my nervous system down and I'm ready to go into the room. But before I go into that room, I want to visualize. I want to visualize the outcome I want and I'd like to happen, but I also visualize the other possibilities. The reason I do that is that then my anxiety is much better because I am understanding the different possible outcomes. I'm understanding what my response is going to be, because where our focus goes, our energy flows. So if you think about that, so once I've thought about all the different possible outcomes, I then visualize the outcome I really want. Because if I am focused on that in a positive way, whilst understanding the person I'm negotiating with, my energy is going to go in that direction, and I'm going to approach the conversation in a much more positive way. So we've got this. Has anyone seen the diagram of the brain? Okay. So unfortunately, this is our reptilian brain. It's the old brain. It's the piece of the brain that has never evolved. We don't know why that is, but this is where all of your decision making happens. And it's instinct. It's basically the old part of our brain is pre-programmed to move towards pleasure and away from pain. And anything that's unknown, it could be painful. So it's the part of our brain that protected us when we were being hunted by wild animals, when we were looking for food, and it still stores our decision making. The next part of the brain, the limbic brain, is our emotions. And our emotions are caused, unfortunately, by our reptilian brain. This is the bit that we wish we had with us all the time. I definitely wouldn't have married my first husband if I'd had this bit going on. So this is the rational thinking. Now, the brilliant thing about really understanding, this is the geeky bit of me, I'm not going to go into neuroscience too much, but this reptilian part of the brain is that we can again learn how to control it. So we have irrational reactions to things all the time because it's anything that might cause us danger, anything at all. So if you're meeting somebody new, if you're putting yourself in any kind of vulnerable situation with anybody, which generally speaking in any form of negotiation we are, then this part of the reptilian brain is going to go steer clear, run away, and that's what then causes these emotions, which is fear, anxiety, anger, upset. And unfortunately, we never get to this bit. So it's great when you go into a negotiating table to really gather empathy about the person you're going to speak to. So I know that I have a couple of clients that will tend to get angry about pretty much anything. Now, anger is also attached with all of these secondary emotions. So irritable, exasperated, rage, disgust, envy, torment. Now, the reason why this is really good for me to know is that if a person is coming across as irritable, I know they're angry about something else. That might not be anything to do with me. They might be feeling angry about a row they've had in the morning. Angry with themselves. They may not like themselves very much. They might be angry about the conversation they've had with their boss. What helps me to know if I'm having a conversation with somebody that's irritable and I know it's not me, is I know they must be angry about something else. So I can work hard to lower the tone of my voice, to talk more gently, to help dissipate the anger, which is going to put me in a better place in that conversation of negotiation. I'll share this with you afterwards, because obviously what you'd ideally want, not the affection and lust bit, you don't really want to be in that in a work situation with your boss, but is you want to be negotiating with people that are in a place of joy. And so you can work quite hard actually with the right tools to get people into a joyful place. How do we do that in negotiation? So easy is you start by simply saying, I'm really looking forward to today's conversation because I love this business and I really want to progress. Or I'm really excited to share with you what I've delivered and what I'm planning on deliver. So there's a psychological study by McKinsey that basically tells us if you go into any negotiation from a place of gratitude and forward thinking in terms of what you're going to continue to offer, and you start it off that way, you will automatically, majority of the times, move somebody from this into a place of joy. we're talking about a boss dynamic here. But even with a friend or a partner, you can imagine going to see a friend perhaps you've had a falling out with, and you immediately say, I am so pleased to have this conversation with you because I really value our friendship and I want it to be even better in the future. You're going to immediately take somebody out of irritable, aren't you? Very difficult to stay irritable if someone said that to you, isn't it? So that's my top tip for starting out your negotiation. The pie. Okay, so walking into a negotiation with a competitive mindset is immediately going to put you at a disadvantage. Walking into negotiation with a sense of wanting both parties to come out of that negotiation better off will place you in a great place for that negotiation. And I always set out my intent. So if I'm negotiating with my brother, I will always say to him, the reason why I'm really passionate about this is because I want us both, or I want the company, and it's got to be something mutually beneficial. So for a boss, let's say Sophie's my EA, let's say Sophie said to me, I'm really passionate about this because I want us both to work together for a really long term. That immediately is going to make me feel very comfortable about sitting at that table with Sophie. Whereas if Sophie comes in and says immediately, okay, well, what I want to talk to you about is I need this and I need this and I need this, I'm immediately thinking, well, how much of that have I got to give? Do you see the difference? And then if I know in the background I haven't got it to give, it's really difficult then not to feel irritable because you might want to give it, but you haven't got it to give. Whereas if Sophie approaches it from that angle, even if I can't give it, I'm going to want to try and get to a place where I can. Do you see the difference? Okay. So look, I love this quote. Diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way. Okay. So this is the bit that we need to get really good at to become a master negotiator. So this is the self bit. This is the other awareness, and this is the bit that people often forget. So self-awareness, emotional self-awareness. Has anyone read Dave Gorman's EQ? Okay, so if you want to understand emotional intelligence, and bearing in mind in the future, EQ will be the thing that separates us from machines, so it's going to be super, super, super important, especially in the assistant world. Dave Gorman wrote a book on emotional intelligence, it's a great introduction. I always thought I was emotionally intelligent because I'm quite sensitive, but actually that's bullshit. It's nothing to do with that. Emotional intelligence is being able to understand other people's emotions and reactions, not being all in tune with your own. So, emotional self-awareness, accurate self-awareness. So we all have this perception of ourselves, and we're not very good at taking feedback, generally speaking, because it might affect how we see ourselves, and we don't want that because it might make us feel uncomfortable. It's impossible to have accurate self-awareness without feedback. So seek out the truth tellers in your life, the people that will genuinely be honest with you and say, actually, do you know what? You can come across, let's see some of mine. I can come across as aggressive, which I never see myself as, but I know now I've had enough feedback that's something I think I'm really tall, I've got a loud voice, I can be fairly opinionated. These things can make me seem aggressive, even then when you get to know me, I'm an absolute softie. So I have to manage that because I know that that's how I can come across. So seek out the truth tellers, get feedback. Personal power. Does everyone know what personal power is? It's simply belief in yourself. Because when we're true to ourselves and we stop people pleasing and we say what's true for us, but acknowledge the fact it might not be true for somebody else, we put ourselves in a position of personal power. Self-control, integrity, drive, optimism, but realistically, not crazy optimistic when you're going into these negotiations. Resilience, intentionality. All these things will stand you in great stead. But what's more important is the other awareness. So the empathy, the service ethic, communication, conflict management, which I think comes next after today, building bonds, and so on. Again, I'll share this with you afterwards. Disappointment. Okay, so this is a really good tool. So let's say you've got to the end of your negotiation and you've got nowhere. Your boss has been an asshole, been difficult. The most important thing to know is that if you express disappointment, it will mean the negotiation isn't closed. So I'm going to use Sophie again. Let's say, and we have had, because we've been 5 years in, Sophie's been with me for the last 3.5. We've had moments when Sophie's wanted something or needed something to happen and I haven't been able to make it happen. If Sophie's walked away from that conversation with, okay, fine, then I think, whew, great, that's that done, don't have to think about that again. If, which Sophie is good at doing, because I think she's a brilliant negotiator, if Sophie tells me, actually, I'm really disappointed about that, but if that's how it is, that's how it is, what it means for me is, you get that icky feeling in your stomach? No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a great thing. And I use it all the time because what it means is I go away and I think, that doesn't make me feel so good. And it's the emotion that drives behaviour thing, isn't it, again? So for all of you, even if you get to the end of a conversation and someone has said no, express your disappointment in a professional way. Say you understand, but you're disappointed. Or say you appreciate their response, but you're disappointed. Because I'm telling you, we're humans. Unless you're dealing with a narcissist or a sociopath, they'll have that feeling. And that will drive them to do something about it if they can. Or at least come back and say, do you know what, I'd love to be able to do something about that now. I genuinely can't, but let's revisit it. So it leaves that conversation piece open. Yeah.
That's true for men and women.
100%. Because unless you're a sociopath, a narcissist, we actually have the same baseline of emotion.
They say that people who are higher up in terms of manager tend to fit more into that spectrum of narcissism.
They do. Yes, go ahead.
But what happens if you're surrounded by narcissists and sociopaths?
Do you know what? I'd get the hell out of there. Because no one needs that in their life, do they? There is a high proportion of narcissists and sociopaths in financial services and anywhere else in the industry, but they are still in the minority. So even if somebody, as they get more senior, they become more resilient. So what generally happens is as you become more senior and you're dealing with bigger decisions that have bigger impact, actually resilience level goes up. So it doesn't mean their baseline of emotion doesn't exist, but they will be more rational, because their brain will have been trained to come out of that reptilian part and into the rational. It doesn't mean they won't feel your disappointment. They won't feel it in the same sense that I will, like, oh God, I'm a mum, it gets me there. They'll feel it in, what does this mean for the business? Sophie's disappointed, she's important to my business, what's the role on impact? So the action or the reaction will still be the same in terms of them having a reaction that say, we need to revisit this, I can't do anything right now, rather than my emotional reaction, but the action from expressing disappointment will still come about. And you know, it's a great way to test whether somebody is a narcissist or a sociopath with that. Because if there is zero response, you know who you're dealing with. Okay, so this is the end of today's presentation. So this is, somebody shared this with me that's a mentor. When I was going through, I was about 2 years into the business and I had a very, very, very good but very challenging member of my team. And they were very important to the business because we were so small, but every conversation I had with this person, I would have a panic attack beforehand. So I am somebody that has suffered from anxiety in my life. I now manage it so much better because I learned tools to, but I have been terribly anxious at times. And this particular person triggered every single thing in terms of I'm not good enough, I can't cope with this conflict. This is the emotional strategy I now use for all conversations. So I go through this preparation. Now, I'm much more of a person that acts from highline. If somebody's giving you a contract, I'll rarely read it, I'll sign it. Anyone else like that? Yeah. Okay. So I'm not good at logic like this. So if somebody gives me an IKEA pack to put together, forget it. I've got bored within about 2 minutes. So I've had to really work at this because I generally want to go, oh yeah, well I might feel like this. Oh, what's the outcome? So I now have to really discipline myself to go through this process. But as a result, I was able to negotiate with somebody that was trying when we had that particular situation with somebody that was supplying the business, and I managed to negotiate £42,000 worth of refund for the service that we got. I would have walked away from that every single time beforehand. So this is amazing. It's about asking yourself questions and about remembering how you might feel. And it's incredible. So it looks at the 3 parts of negotiation: the build-up, how do I feel? Should I express my emotion? So when we're talking about the disappointment thing, yes, you should. How might the person across the table feel? The empathy part. Are they likely to hide or express their emotion? So if you know you've got somebody that can't control their emotions, you can plan for that. Should I recruit a third party either to attend or negotiate on my behalf? Then the main event. What are the things that will make me angry or trigger me? What things might I do to trigger the other person? And that's a really important one. So I know with my brother, if I'm late, he's already triggered. If I interrupt, because I'm the older sister, he's triggered. If I immediately say no to something, he's triggered. So I know that now, and I try not to do those things. What might they do or ask that would make me feel anxious? So it's planning for the questions that are going to make you feel uncomfortable and having an answer ready. So it's like if you're going for promotion, but you know there's that one thing you didn't do, and you're thinking, please don't let me mention that, please don't let me mention that. Already have an answer ready for it. Do you know what? You're absolutely right. I should have done that, and the reason why I didn't is this, this, and this, but I've learned from it, and I now do this. Perfect. What are the possible outcomes of the negotiation? What do I hope to achieve? What do I expect to achieve? So it's a bit like, this is my target, and this is my baseline, this is okay. Anything else is a bit shit, but I might have to deal with it, okay? How are these outcomes going to make me feel? Now, the reason why it's really good is because we all know life moves on. So even if it's the worst possible outcome, it's knowing how you might feel. I'm going to feel sad, frustrated, and then thinking, but do you know what? In 5 years' time, will I be worried about that? No, probably not. Or is it a signpost I need to leave? Is it a signpost I need to move on? Is it a signpost that I've married the wrong person? I keep going very back to that, but I had plenty of those. And how are these, and then should I express feelings? Because maybe it's planning for the fact you know that you could get upset, but knowing you've already teed your mate up at the end of the phone. Listen, I'm about to have a conversation with my boss. I'm not sure how it's going to go. I've planned for it. Can you be on the other line so that I know you're there when I walk out, rather than needing to express it in that meeting? I'm not, but I'm just about to finish, so you will just be 2 minutes. I'm not 1 o'clock. And how are my counterparts likely to feel about the outcomes? So do you know what the brilliant thing about this is that you can start off high, but if you know that your counterpart might be okay with here, then you can renegotiate during the negotiation. Now, I'll start from that point, but if you can see this going awry, but you've planned, you can then say, well, do you know what? I came in here really wanting this, but now I'm thinking that we both might be happy with this. What are your thoughts on that? Never go in with that. But if you know that you're fighting a losing battle, then having a secondary negotiation offer is a really clever way of that 2 pieces of the pie thing. You know, everyone leaving with a piece of the pie. Everyone thinking that they've got something positive out of a negotiation. And that's it for today. So thank you very, very much for listening. And if you've got any questions, queries, you can get in touch with me. You can email me. You can find my fascinating life on Instagram, and let me tell you, it's fascinating. If you want to see a 40-year-old woman gets up to with a daughter and 2 stepsons, follow that. And this is our company Instagram, which is much more exciting because Sophie manages it. But I'd love to hear from you if I can help with anything else at all right?
Could we get these slides sent?
Absolutely, yes. The easiest way to get them is probably to email me directly, because I don't know how I'm going to get all of your specific GDPR stuff, you know. So email me at lucy@cncsearch.co.uk and we'll be glad to share them. All right, thank you.